Welcome back to another episode of the Outdoor Adventures podcast here on Brownfield. I'm Brent Barnett, and here in person today, I'm joined by Kent Boucher from the First Gen Hunter podcast, Hunter here in Iowa. And Kent, great to have you with us on the show, and nice to see you in person. How's it going, man?
Hey Brent, good to see you as well. Doing good. I was actually for once in my life a little bit early, and you live in a pretty good spot here for deer density, so I thought I'd take a little cruise around the block and see if I couldn't bring in a shed for show and tell this morning. But no luck. It's still early though in the season. Everyone always, I liken it to, how like around October 15th. One person somewhere in the Midwest will get footage of like two bucks getting after it, like they're fighting hard, and truthfully, there probably is a hot doe or something in the area that just an outlier, situation.
Yep.
But then they'll post it and they'll be like, "Oh, the rut is in full swing. It's time, fellas." And it's like, no, it's not. It's not time yet. And the same thing happens with sheds every year. Somebody gets a couple trail camera pictures with half rack bucks or a fully shed buck, and they're like, "Oh, it's time, guys." And there's definitely sheds on the ground right now, but the best days are still ahead of us. Just like on October 15, you see that one outlier rut action video. The best days are still ahead of us.
You ever spot any from the car before?
Oh yeah, I've found exactly 3 road sheds. My first one was back in 2019. And it was a dandy. I mean, it was awesome. Double brow tine, not a split brow tine, a double brow tine. And I've never shot a buck with a double brow tine. Never found another shed with a double brow tine. So it was a pretty unique shed.
That's awesome.
It was a good size, probably 50, somewhere in the 50-inch range. And I could not get permission to go pick it up. It was in this field, and I tried everything, knocking on neighbors' doors. The house on the farm was vacant, and the landowner, as best as I could tell, lived in California. And so I've found him on Facebook, sent him a message. He never responded. I probably could have gone and snagged that thing, and no one would have ever missed it. But I felt too guilty doing that.
Man, I think that says a lot about your character, and just listening to your program and getting to know you, like you do everything right and by the book, man.
I appreciate that.
That's something to feel good about, because can you imagine the number of people that would just go out and just go snag it out of somebody's
field? I know people that
do that.
Okay. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking was there's something about when you pick up a shed, some people don't care. They just think, sheds are whatever, I'll pick it up if I see it type thing. And that's fine. But for people who really enjoy it, the best part of it is knowing that you're the first person to lay hands on that thing. Like the last time that something was touching this, unless a coyote dragged it around somewhere or a squirrel, it was on the buck's head, and there's just something cool about being able to, I don't know, be connected to that animal in that way and pick that up. So I didn't want to rob that from somebody. If there's, maybe there was a local family member, a nephew or something that liked to shed hunt that ground. And, my family owns some farmland that we don't live on. And I like to go shed hunt there. And I oftentimes wonder how often it gets poached for sheds by, other locals that, because people think it's not as big of a deal, but I don't know. You figure you do things right, and you'll just sleep better at night. But I did find 2 others that I could go get.
Oh, that's good.
So one was I must have driven by this thing dozens of times, because it was dozens at least. It was a year-old shed. It's kind of on an alternate route that I take to and from work, but I usually take it because I want to spot a road shed.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times I had to have driven by this thing. The only thing I can think of is a coyote did pee on it. Like, it stunk. My wife made me keep it in the garage for a while, but then I washed it up. But that thing reeked. No, it wasn't peed on by a coyote. It was sprayed by a skunk. That's what it was. Okay. It stunk, and I don't know if a coyote dragged it out somewhere, or I suppose even the skunk maybe could have. Squirrels will drag sheds around, but I don't know. I must have just driven by it a million times. But all of a sudden, I look over there one day, and sure as anything, plain as day. Here's this shed laying there. I'm like, how have I not seen it? So I thought it was fresh at the time. And my coworker knew who owned the farm, and he called him up. He's like, yeah, you can go grab it. And so I was able to snag that one. And then last summer, this one's probably my favorite. I'm good friends with Doug Duran. You may see him connected to Meat Eater and his Sharing the Land initiative, which is an awesome program. And I was up there in July visiting him, and as I was leaving, I just look over in this field, and here is a shed that someone has planted beans over. Like, it's in the row.
Really?
Yeah. And I like slam on the brakes and turn around. And just by chance, Doug was following behind me and my coworker. And we had asked him for directions to this neighboring town because we had to go meet up with another friend of ours, Thomas Milsna, from, you might know him from Untamed Ambition. But we were like, we pulled over, and Doug's like, you guys, you just got to go that way. You know, he's like, he thinks we're lost or something. I'm like, no, Doug, what do you think the chances are? I go grab that shed. And he's like, oh, my family owns that land. I'll go get it for you right now. And so Doug went and snagged me this nice, I think it was a 5-point side, if I remember. It's in my laundry room at my house.
That's awesome.
Right when you walk in the house, I see it every day. It's a cool shed and a fun memory, you know. So yeah, you can find road sheds for sure.
That skunk shed, you should just throw it under your stand and have like natural cover scent.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think I scrubbed it all clean, and now it sits in my office. It's kind of a cool shed.
Man, what a story. Well done. You know, for me, I'm thinking my most memorable shed find, which there aren't too many in the Barnett playbook here because I'm not very good at it and haven't done it too much. But one year, I was probably in college, was out doing some mushroom hunting in the spring on the lease that we had.
Sure, yeah. It's a good time to find sheds.
Right there in a creek bed, kind of on, like, there's a little mound of wet grass, and I saw it from far away. It was a really big shed, and I ran over there and picked it up. And sure enough, it was the shed off a buck we had called Tips on trail camera.
Uh-huh.
Big 10-point with swooping main beams that came and touched together.
Oh, wow.
And
sombrero buck.
That year, he was probably upper 140s, low 150s.
Oh,
and we never did have an encounter with him. He actually got killed by the neighbors the next year, and he was a giant at that point.
Oh, man.
But so that day, I picked that shed up, and then I did a huge sweep right there, thinking maybe the other side's right here. What's funny is, like 10 yards just outside of the timber line from where that was, I found two more about the size of this guy right here.
Wow.
And at that point, I'm thinking, oh, we're cooking now.
Yeah,
I'm the shed hunting expert here. This is nothing. I'd never found another one for 10 years after that.
Did you go back to that same spot every year?
You know, actually, no, I didn't. I moved away, after I graduated college, and I never went back there.
You should go back and shed hunt there because when you find, especially off multiple deer in one spot, there's something about that spot that bucks like during that shedding time of year.
Yeah.
They're spending a lot of time there if you're finding. Now, that being said, what I would call that like a little mini honey hole and who knows, maybe it was a lot better. Maybe there was 20 sheds there that if you had
just kind of
searched a wider radius there, maybe you would have found them. But
yeah, because I had my mushroom lens on and not my shed antler lens for all I covered at that point.
Yeah, that's true. and those spots historically can be good year after year. Now, that being said, I have come across really only one like dream honey hole that people, hardcore shed hunters like dream about, right? And I think my friend Caleb and we found I want to say in one spring, we probably found 25 sheds in a 30-acre square. You know, it was just crazy how many sheds were in there. And there's been some lost habitat in that area since then, and it just has never even come close to producing that kind of that number of sheds again. So it can change, but then there's other spots where, you find 2 or 3 in there every single year. And I bet you that spot where you found, especially with there being multiple age class bucks in there, I bet you if you went back there today, or maybe not today, but in March sometime, as long as you beat somebody else there, you probably find a few more.
Yeah, that was one I'll never forget. Just thinking like, wow, this buck that we've had on camera and here's a shed, like he was standing here. Like,
yeah,
that was a kind of a cool feeling.
Absolutely.
Just getting to kind of connect with the buck a little bit. I know it sounds crazy maybe to the listeners.
No. I don't think there's anything crazy about it. In fact, I think one of so I always go back. I don't know which I like better, bow hunting or shed hunting. I love them both.
Yeah.
And it's because I love deer, right? And the thing that shed hunting allows for, well, really allows for a couple things, right? It allows for you to explore a lot of ground. I love just being in habitat, wildlife habitat. And I think all humans to some degree have hardwired in us a curiosity to see what's over that next hill. Mm-hmm. And I have a very strong curiosity for that, right? And so it scratches that itch. The other thing, you don't have to worry about scent. You don't have to worry about noise. You don't have to worry about, bringing all this gear with you that you do during, deer season. And so it's kind of a little bit more relaxed.
Plus, you don't have to worry about ticks.
Yeah, well, when you get later in the season, you can start worrying about
true.
ticks. But yeah, this time of year, no worries of ticks. That's a great point. And then finally, the thing that you just mentioned, you get to interact with so many bucks. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can, it was interesting that you said you looked for that match set, and you'll read that on every article. Oh, you find a shed, make sure you do a 100-yard radius. Oftentimes the match will be in that. That's not true. I found a lot of sheds, and I rarely find matches. I do on occasion, mm-hmm. But from what I've found is bucks will they'll drop a shed, and there's guys that put like corn piles out and stuff like that, and they're trying to get the buck to spend a ton of time there, so he'll drop both sides there. That would be a way to hack it, but I don't do any of that. I just scour the landscape. And one time, a perfect example of this would be my brother-in-law found this really funky shed. And we were looking like crazy for that match. We were like, man, where's that match going to be? Yeah. And my friend Caleb and I, we were searching this area for probably a month. And finally, 0.7 of a mile away on a completely different landowner, 2 landowners away, mm-hmm. on his farm, we found the match.
Wow. And
it just shows you how much ground that buck covered before that other antler dropped. Maybe it dropped later that night. Probably not. Probably took a couple days. Mm-hmm. And so those matches oftentimes aren't around there. So, in a good year, let's say you find 15 sheds and only 1 or 2 of those sheds are matches, you're interacting with at least 12, 11, 12 different bucks. Whereas if you buck out here in Iowa during archery and gun season, yeah. you get to handle 2 bucks, right? So yeah. I think when you say it's cool that you got to interact with, or in that case, like it's a buck you didn't get a kill, mm-hmm. but now you can still see what his antlers are like. You know what I mean? When you pick up his sheds, and you have the hope of hunting him next year. I
think we ended up giving that shed to the guy who killed him the next year.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and he blew up the next year and still had the main beams that came together. We had pictures of him that next year in velvet. I don't think we ever got him out of velvet, so he must have just been coming over at certain winds, or I don't know when, but they were all daytime photos, which was cool. He was a brute. Cool. I was thinking while you were talking, sometimes you see videos out there that people will get a video of a buck actually shedding his antlers.
Oh,
the coolest one that I've ever seen, someone that you've had on your show before, Caleb Greiner from Midwest Whitetail, several years back on one of his hunts, in the late season, I think it was late muzzleloader season, he shot this really old buck, mm-hmm. and on impact, when the bullet hits him, both antlers fall off his head. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
That is wild.
You'll have to look up if you're listening to this or watching it on the video stream, you'll have to search one of Caleb's late muzzleloader bucks. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's insane.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know if I've seen that, but it doesn't surprise me that Caleb would come across it. There's few people who spend as many hours as he does in whitetail habitat. And I think he's seen a lot of wild things in his years of hunting. Yeah,
I think it was like an 8 or a 9-year-old deer too, and
that's crazy.
Both of them just bam, just popped off.
Well, sometimes people will shoot them, and they're fortunate enough to like see the antlers drop. The buck takes off, and he sheds on his death run.
Yeah,
and Now, thankfully, there's a blood trail that kind of leads you where he went. But I got to imagine there's been a few guys out there who have found the buck without the antlers.
Yeah.
And that would be kind of a downer.
Another one that I was thinking of, like a story for me, and I didn't put this at the top because I technically didn't find it. It was my cousin who picked it up, but I was with him. My brother, this was probably 2007, 2008 time frame. Mm-hmm. So I was in high school at that point, and he had arrowed a buck that evening, okay, and it was late October or early November, right in there. Arrowed a buck. It was kind of a marginal shot, a little back, and so he had let him, he backed out and waited several hours, and then he asked me, like my dad and one of our cousins, to go along, and so we were tracking this buck in the middle of the night, and along like the route in this thicket, my cousin knelt down and kind of like some little canary grass. There was a little pocket, a little opening, and he saw the tip of a tine, and he wrestled it out of that grass had grown over it. And I'll never forget because everyone in the group was like, "Oh, cool, you found a shed. Like we're here in the middle of the night tracking a buck. You found a shed.
That's
cool."
Pretty impressive.
Me,
in the dark,
who was obsessed at that age with it was the year I remember we had our first trail camera as a family.
Yeah.
It was an old Moultrie, had a bright flash on it. And so, like, the quality of pictures was excellent because if you walked by it blinded you and you walked by it.
Probably scared more deer than anything.
Definitely. Yeah. That year, we had pictures of this really big 6x5, a slick, typical 6x5. But the G3 and G2 on the right side, like the whole common base thing people talk about, were kind of coming off each other. And it had just enough of an angle that it was very unique. I mean, this is a mid-160s buck.
Wow.
And so we're trailing this deer. My cousin pulls this shed out of the grass, and I recognize it is that buck. And it's the previous year's shed.
That's cool.
I just died inside thinking, oh my gosh. No one believed me either. I said, wait till we get home. I'm going to compare this side with the pictures from this year, and they are identical. And it was the previous year.
Did you get the satisfaction of proving them all wrong?
I did prove like my family. Some of them,
that's good. Yeah,
I think they were maybe still a little hesitant. Like, I can kind of see it, but no, it was the buck. I'm telling you, it was him. We never did get that deer. Another instance where the neighbor ended up taking him opening day of rifle season that year.
But you still got to experience something off of that buck by finding his shed.
Yeah,
you know? And I think that I just interviewed Josh Sparks from Midwest Whitetail, and he if people follow along with his hunting stories on YouTube. He was after that drop tine buck in 2023, and he believes that buck died probably of EHD, and so he wasn't hunting him this year in 2024. And he's already been out shed hunting and looking for sheds off of another buck with his friend Drake Lamb, who's also on the show often.
Yeah,
and he found one of the drop tine buck's old sheds, like a 2-year-old shed, this spring already.
Wow.
Or this winter, I guess. And he's like, even after death, he's still drop tine, still messing with me, But that's cool because he never got that buck, but here he's got his antlers and can enjoy the getting at least to know what he was like to some degree. Because we can see him in pictures. We can see him through binos. We can maybe even get close encounters where we almost got a shot opportunity. But I don't care what it is. You just never know what a buck's antlers are like until you're holding them, And shed hunting gives you that opportunity.
Okay, I was going to ask you about something here. It's a little random. Trophy Bucks of Iowa, really popular social media page. I've actually had Eric Klein on, the founder of that. He's a good friend of the show. They shared a post here several months back, and it was someone, I don't know if they were from Iowa or Missouri. I'm not really sure the details there, but it was a picture of this, weird, non-typical shed with tines everywhere. And it was a story about, this was my prized possession. It was stolen out of my truck. Can someone help?
I think I saw that too.
It was really circulating. I don't know if it ever got found, but did you see that post? And would you keep a shed like that in the back of your truck?
No. Some of those sheds, some of those really nice sheds, have incredible value. You get up, you get it to like, a great shed is anything in the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. So North American Shed Hunters Club, to qualify, you have to find a 60-inch net shed.
Okay.
Or a 120-inch match set. That's minimum to get into North American Shed Hunters Club. So that gives you an idea. Like that's anything in the 60s is a good shed. 70s is a great shed. 80s is like you might, the non like super hardcore shed hunters, like the guys who have. So I love shed hunting, but there's a whole nother level.
I had no idea.
that are obsessed. I know I got a friend who literally has camped out. He's built his life around shed hunting. So his job allows him to not work during shed season. And he will go and he'll pass bucks during archery season, great bucks, just because he wants to find their sheds during shed season. And he'll even camp out in the area where he knows a buck is during shed season and go out and glass him, every evening and in the mornings, seeing if he's shed yet, just waiting for him to shed so he can go in and pick up his shed. So that shows you
that's intense.
Oh man, it doesn't get any more intense than that. Right. And so there's value on great sheds, and those kind of guys, they find, probably quite a few 80-inch sheds in their life, but they also find some 90s. And there's even a few guys out there that'll find 100-inch sides. And those sheds, some of those sheds will sell for over $20,000 a piece.
You're kidding me.
No, there's incredible value on some of those freakish sheds. Now, a shed that's like 60 inches, it'll just sell for its worth in ground up dog chews. You know what I mean? Or to be put into a chandelier or something like that. But once you get up into that kind of that holy grail size of shed of, 90s, hundreds, there's, and that shed, if I remember it correctly, was probably in that 90s, hundreds. So
yeah,
that guy was driving around with, with a nice little nest egg in his truck. It was just not a wise choice. But at the same time, if you find it, you got to get it home, and maybe that's what happened to him.
Yeah, that's true.
Or maybe he was driving it somewhere to get it measured, or you don't want to cast blame on a guy.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't want to make it seem like I was hating.
No.
Feel bad for the guy.
But if he wasn't. If he was just being careless, that's a bad thing to be careless with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. I wanted to ask you about that just because, I didn't realize what they're worth. I didn't realize there was a market for that. So is it just collectors that look for them, or what?
Want them. Yeah, there was a story, and again, I don't know if this was true or not. It was circulating on social media a year or two ago. Some guy was at a something similar to the Iowa Deer Classic. I don't think it was the Iowa Deer Classic, but something like that, a deer-themed trade show, right? And somebody there had a giant shed, just a freakish shed. And there was someone there who was a high-dollar collector. He's like, man, I want to buy that shed off of you. And he paid, if I remember correctly, I think it was over 10 or 15 grand for the shed. Well, then found out later it was a farm-raised deer and not a wild, because the market for a wild deer antler versus a pen raised or basically livestock shed, right, is different from what I understand. I've never sold any antlers. I never bought any antlers. No, that's not true. I bought some antlers from an antique store to turn into rattling antlers because I just can't bring myself to use any of my sheds that I find to do it. But there's I could be a little off on some of these values, but I mean there's some really impressive numbers that fly around with that.
If someone wants to make you an offer, feel free, right?
I'd never sell my sheds. My kids will do that someday along with my football card collection, I'm sure, where it's like, man, there's some of this stuff probably has some value to it, but I mean, nothing crazy, but I'll let them make that money. I don't have the heart to do it. I like to collect them just because I like to collect them.
No, I hear you. We'll have to go on a shed hunt together sometime. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It sure would.
We've got a lot of spots we could go to, but I think we're kind of winding down here, Kent. How can people watch or listen to your show? Because you've got kind of a whole network of hosts now compared to last time we had you on.
Yeah. So go to just just type in First Gen Hunter podcast or First Gen Hunter into any kind of podcast app, and it'll come right up. And you're right. I've had Caleb Drake kind of join the network. He hosts a podcast called the Backwoods Bulletin podcast that comes out every Tuesday. And sometimes it's interviews. Sometimes it's a recap of something he's been up to. Caleb's one of the best hunters I know. I think you've had him on your show before. He shot a giant in Illinois this year. And you've been on his show too, the Backwoods Bulletin.
Yeah, it's a great program.
Yeah, and then the guy who introduced us, a mutual friend, Noel Gandy, during the rut this year, he kind of covered the rut for me. He ran the Rut Revival podcast, and he's going to be back, I believe, this spring with the Strut Revival podcast during
nice.
turkey season, and that comes out on Sundays. And hopefully he'll be in more of a full-time role of posting shows on the network after the Strut Revival time period. And then, of course, my show runs every Friday, and that's almost always interviews. I had, like I said, Josh Sparks on recently. Had the guys from The Element Wild on recently. I got, I don't want to say who it is yet, but next week, a person I think almost all of us would regard as one of the best hunters on the planet right now. I hope, as long as everything keeps working out schedule wise, should be having him on here soon. And then
that's awesome. Congrats, man.
Oh yeah. I'm super excited to just learn from him,
Yeah.
And then, my friend Garrett Fike, one of the guys who, played just a critical role in me getting into hunting, just had him on, this week, and he'll be posted on this Friday. So talk a little bit about his recent elk hunt with his dad. And, that was a cool deal where they did the horseback thing into this really remote area in Idaho. And then he's actually already found a matched set of sheds off of a giant Illinois buck all the way back in November. He found his first fresh shed in November this year.
Wow. Like a this year shed, not a previous year?
Yes, this year. And he's actually found a previous year's shed already too. So he's already got 3 sheds, and he matched up the other side of that giant buck that he found in November. Like on December 1st. So obviously something's going on health-wise with that buck, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But some good stuff coming up soon, and always good to be on the show here with you too, Brent, and love what you do. It's really been impressive, some of the people you've brought into this channel through the years, and you have quite the archive as well.
Yeah. Well, if you're check out Kent's archives, deep in the archives is the craziest interview I've ever heard. And we won't get into it here, but it was a man who survived a grizzly bear attack.
Oh, episode 113.
Yeah. It was the craziest interview I've ever heard.
Yeah. Every bear attack is like, you just can't even imagine it while you're listening to it. And this bear attack is like it's the craziest bear attack you'll ever hear. It's mind-blowing. And the guy survives by some miracle. He survived. Yeah. Obviously with quite the physical toll afterwards, but and emotional and mental toll. He talks about that. That came along with that. But yeah, just episode 113. It's a great episode. And I do want to say too, if we didn't get into a ton of the tips on finding sheds, if people want some more of that, you can go to my website, firstgenhunter.com, and I got a bunch of articles up there that I've written on how to find more sheds.
Awesome. Hey, man, thanks a lot for coming into my house studio here.
Hey,
I guess
awesome.
You could say a little home
It's
setup.
nice. You got your little buck here.
I got the Euro mount back, and so
looks good.
They did a really great job on it. That was DK Custom Taxidermy in New Sharon. So.
Yeah, he looks beautiful, and I like how he's got the little bit of trash on his antlers there from rubbing, he's getting into that high testosterone mode, and he's got this, we were talking about, he's got this swooping nose.
Yeah, his nose kind of veers to the right, it's kind of weird. I don't know what happened there, if he broke it or what.
Yeah, he's just got a beautiful rack. I mean, I love the color on it, and I love how unique it is with, he's a kind of a 2x3 with a brow tine on the left side here. just a funky rack, but it's cool.
Funky. First public land buck. I was sure proud of him. He was something for me. It was a story I'll always remember.
Absolutely. And who knows, he might have even been sprouting a little drop tine there on the
Yeah,
side. He's got this little antler bump. But
future drop tine buck.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. Hey, thanks again, man. We'll see you around, okay?
Yep.
All right, that's Kent Boucher with us here from the First Gen Hunter podcast, and you can always catch all of our episodes on the Brownfield Ag News YouTube channel or on the audio versions wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to the show as well. That'll wrap it up for the show this week. I'm Brent Barnett here with the Outdoor Adventures podcast. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.